Hey there, welcome to School of Emo, the podcast where we dive into the world of emo, pop punk, and everything in between. If you've ever found yourself in your car screaming the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday, wearing way too much eyeliner in the early 2000s, adding a buckle or a chain to every outfit you've put on, you are in the right place. I'm Erin Judge, and each week I will be your fellow student, guiding you through the music, the culture, and the history that shaped an entire generation of angsty teens. I am not the teacher of this school. I am a fellow student, here to learn alongside you and from you. Together, we will cover a lot of information that doesn't really matter, but will remind us of the days of stalking MySpace channels and getting lost in chat rooms. So connect your dial-up, turn on your webcam, and let's go to School of Emo. If you're watching this right now, can you guess who we are talking about today? If you're listening, I'm currently wearing a t-shirt that is a black heart, and in white lettering in the heart, it says, "Cut my wrist and black my eyes." We are talking about none other than Hawthorne Heights, who I think are the epitome of emo in the third wave, outside of the crazy Warped Tour stages. Like, they are so deeply, deeply emo. Maybe not quite as hardcore, but hardcore in their own way. And I'm really excited to get into their role within the scene, their continued role in the scene as they have never left, and just talk a little bit about the impact that they have made for so many of us and how they can have such a legacy where wearing a shirt like this might get some weird stares from those who don't get it, but those who get it, and it will always connect us, these lyrics alone. So, talking about Hawthorne Heights, we are going to go all the way to Ohio, talking about the band that taught us how to scream for the first time, that gave us lyrics to very dramatically and in some cases very honestly share the feelings that we were dealing with in the most Midwest way possible. So whether you're scream singing Ohio is for Lovers in your bedroom, or you're clutching your chest during Niki FM, chances are this band holds a real place in your emo heart. So grab your studded belt, grab that Sidekick phone. We are going to go back to the early 2000s, especially 2001 in Dayton, Ohio. So Hawthorne Heights was formed, but originally was going by the name A Day in the Life. And that earlier version of the band leaned more into this pop punk space than what we know of them as Hawthorne Heights. So they released one album as A Day in the Life, but by 2003, they had evolved musically and emotionally into the band that we know now as Hawthorne Heights. The original lineup include JT Woodruff, who is still there today, on vocals and rhythm guitar, the emotional center of the band, the most iconic emo haircut boy of that time. Matt Ridnor on bass and backing vocals, who brought kind of that grounding energy to JT's voice. Micah Carley on lead guitar. Aaron Bucciarelli, Bucciarelli, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, on drums, and of course, Casey Calvert, who brought the screams. And we will get into more about Casey, who is no longer with the band for some reasons. So the band carved their own space in this emo meets post-hardcore scene. They were very much emo core with a little bit of a softer touch, which I think we saw with emo in the third wave in the 2000s. Bands either went the more heavy, kind of almost bordering the line of pop punk, right? That very much Warped Tour on MTV kind of space. Or there was the softness. And that's where we saw the bands like Dashboard Confessional and bands like that. And Hawthorne Heights kind of fell somewhere in the middle. So the softer hardcore blend that made emo in the third wave truly what it was. It was like the core center of what emo had become at that time. And they were one of the biggest bands kind of writing in that space. So they wrote love songs, but also funeral anthems. Their music not only spoke to this kind of angsty teenage heartbreak that we saw from some other bands, but to loss, loneliness, the ache of growing up with emotional intensity. The lyrics are so incredibly deep and sad and kind of hard to process, even the cut my wrist, black my eyes. Like, this is a very hard set of lyrics to process and explain, but so many, preteens, teens at the time connected to these lyrics because they truly hit this level of deep emotion that many people were going through, especially if they had experienced loss or deep pain, more than just heartbreak, but these deep feelings of just not knowing like how the world would go on based on how you felt in the moment, which Hawthorne Heights created lyrics for, and I think provided a space to process in in order to kind of save people from the darkness that they were experiencing, which sounds counterintuitive, right? We've talked about, the history of emo, and with the origins of emo, we already went through some of the negative criticisms that many people had about the emo scene and emo kids, emo bands, and how it glorified suicide, glorified self-harm, all these things. And I think these are lyrics that could probably be used as an example of that. If you don't understand what the band was trying to do with their lyrics, how people were actually utilizing these lyrics, it could be easy to see it as like this surface level thing and glorification of, harm or whatever it may be. But the reality is that many people use these lyrics as a way to truly share the pain that they were experiencing so that they did not inflict these levels of self-harm and these types of behaviors. So highly misunderstood by people who were not in this space. And I think Hawthorne Heights, they've continued to share that message and carry, I think, the weight and responsibility almost of the space that they created for themselves, which is really special. So let's talk a little bit about kind of where that came from and how it evolved. So their debut album, The Silence in Black and White, dropped in 2004. So they had already had the one album, but now they were Hawthorne Heights' new sound, kind of new chapter, new era for them, The Silence in Black and White. And with no exaggeration, this shook the scene at the time. It was gold, it connected, and it has lived on through its own legacy since then. You couldn't go to Hot Topic or Middle School Dance without hearing Ohio is for Lovers. So Cut My Wrists, Blind My Eyes wasn't just a lyric, it was a generational outcry. And this song became an anthem for emo kids who were feeling misunderstood. Its music video was everywhere on Fuse and MTV2, showing the world that Hawthorne Heights is more than just a passing trend. The music video is the most emo early 2000s music video that exists. If you have not seen the Ohio is for Lovers music video, please go watch it. JT, it's so incredibly emo. It's like the abandoned house, filming, the looks on their faces, the way that the camera work is happening. It is so incredibly like early 2000s, very much emo. It is gold and it lives on as like iconic because it truly is. So looking at the lyrics, hey there, I know it's hard to feel like I don't care at all. Where you are and how you feel with these lights off as these wheels keep rolling on and on. Slow things down or speed them up. Not enough or way too much. How are you when I'm gone? And I can't make it on my own because my heart is in Ohio. So cut my wrists and black my eyes so I can fall asleep tonight or die. Because you kill me. You know you do. You kill me well. You like it too, and I can tell. You'll never stop until my final breath is gone. Spare me just 3 last words. I love you is all she heard. I'll wait for you, but I can't wait forever. So following that success, they released their second album, If Only You Were Lonely, in 2006. So this album actually debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, and it featured Saying Sorry and This Is Who We Are, songs that showed a maturity in their sound and their songwriting, but still leaning very heavily in this emotional vulnerability, deep-seated emotions of loss, hurt, not knowing where you fit into the world, not knowing how the world will go on based on the darkness that you feel. So, looking at saying sorry, these colors will not change. You change the way I see them. These words will fade when you explain why you hate them. We are the same. She keeps repeating all that she's needed. She says she's right here. She seems so distant. Saying goodbye this time, the same old story. Seeing you cry makes me feel like saying sorry. Just a few last hours. We got to make this count. We're counting backwards. We're falling forwards. She keeps repeating all that she needed. She says she's right here. She seems so distant. Saying goodbye this time, the same old story. Seeing you cry makes me feel like saying sorry. Saying goodbye is the hardest part. Wish we knew this from the start. So the momentum was real for Hawthorne Heights. Like they found, and I think JT has talked about this when we were on the Emo's Not Dead cruise this year, 2025. Hawthorne Heights did a few sets, and then they did a songwriting set. And JT was sharing, some of their history as a band and some of the kind of reasons behind certain songs and things like that. And he was talking about how, at the time early on, like record labels, they weren't fully taking them seriously. And it was a bit of a shot in the dark, but they happened to just have the look and the sound that the record labels didn't necessarily see as being worth it. Like they kind of had to fight for themselves there. But the generation of the scene, the emo space, was already primed and ready to go and was ready for its explosion, right? That we saw moving into 2006 and the explosion of like online spaces and the commercialization of emo. This was right at the cusp of that, where people were gravitating towards this style of music and this style, like aesthetically of bands and what this looked like. And so the band kind of hit at the right time and entered the space at the right time and had their own unique sound within the space at the right time and completely exploded. They were, at the top of the game in this space during this time. And so in 2007, unfortunately, while they had so much momentum, the band and their fans were hit with the devastating news that Casey Calvert, the band's guitarist and unclean vocalist, passed away unexpectedly at the age of 26 from an accidental drug interaction. So they were connected. They had the fandom, they had the fame, I guess you could say at that time, where this type of loss that they experienced as a band was felt across the scene as a whole, and fans across the world mourned. There were candlelight vigils, message boards were flooded with grief. There were tributes that poured in from bands like Silverstein and Senses Fail. JT Woodruff later shared how emotionally crushing that time was and how Casey's absence still echoes in their music today. Even after all these years, you'll still see fans wearing RIP Casey shirts at shows. And what's interesting is that they decided and made the choice not to replace him. They have the screaming and stuff is still there, but definitely less present. And instead of just replacing Casey, they kind of let that hole, if you will, or that void be present, kind of honoring that space that he held during that time. So as if it wasn't enough to go through that and the grief that they were experiencing, Victory Records, which was their label at the time, was causing chaos. And unfortunately, we've talked about this with a lot of bands during this time. Victory Records was not known for being the best, but no matter what the label was, it seemed like all the bands around this era were dealing with record label drama, whether that be fraud, whether that be poor contracts, and just all these issues that we saw across the music industry as a whole, not just within this emo space, but definitely prevalent within this kind of scene in this space and the record labels that were present around that time. So the band entered a nasty legal battle with the label, accusing them of misleading sales tactics and underpayment. One of the most public emo era label disputes, right up there with Taking Back Sunday's drama. So this was huge in that time. They lost a lot of money, a lot of not so great things happened. And you can kind of see, as we get into some of the albums that follow and everything, you can see where the band kind of lost a little bit of momentum, likely related to the loss that the band experienced with Casey, but also with the legal issues that the band was going through with the record label. That is draining financially. And when you're going through a financial battle like that, and that's going to affect your creativity, right? It will turn into a creative battle. And when you have to be creative to put out new music to connect to fans in a new way and keep your momentum going, that's almost impossible whenever you're going through both grief and now these kind of legal, dramatic, deeply seated issues that can affect your entire career. So it's impressive that they continue to release music and then they've continued to stay present. A lot of bands would have fallen apart. We've seen that, right? With the history of some of these other bands around that time being overworked, having these drama, these legal issues, and all this other chaos, like they would have fallen apart. But Hawthorne Heights did not. They actually prevailed and stuck with it. So in 2008, they released Fragile Future, which was the first album after Casey's passing. It leaned more alt rock and was met with some mixed reviews, but for fans, it was a necessary step in healing. And it was a way to show that they were continuing to press forward. Growth is expected, I think, in our scene. And you can see it with like the fact that this is the shirt that I'm wearing right now. The fact that when we were young, in 2024, like it was all about the top albums of that era and time. Like everyone's doing these reunion tours of like their top albums in the early 2000s. The emo scene does not necessarily like evolution of music. I say that with a little bit of humor, but a lot of honesty, because I feel the same way. There's not very many bands that I know past like the albums I loved when I was younger and experiencing it in real time. I'm kind of stuck to those things. And I think a lot of us are, and we're very stubborn about it. And unfortunately, that shows with artists and the music that they continue to put out. But with this album, they did have the song Rescue Me, which was one of the most popular songs on the album. One of my favorites that they play. I think it shows again maturity, it shows some evolution, and it's leaning on the deep emotions and the pain and hurt and the loss and all the things that they had gone through. So looking at the lyrics, just breathe. The midnight air will do you well. Believe. I miss your taste. I miss your smell. The past mistakes that brought you here. I'll break the fall for you, my dear. I'll ask the nurse for bandages and send me on my way. Rescue me from everything. I just want to live. I just want to breathe. Every other day, I sit and wait for the same bad news. Can you hear me say, I've got nothing left to lose? Someone please start making sense and beg the Lord for accidents. I've seen the worst case scenario, slowly letting go. Rescue me from everything. I just want to live. I wish I could breathe. So good. In the 2010, so a few years later, the band went independent. So they were done with the record label, one of the best moves they could have made based on what had happened. And they launched an EP trilogy, Hate in 2011, Hope in 2012, and Hurt in 2015. These EPs brought them back to their heavier roots, so mixing the screams with melody and the raw emotional themes. They toured relentlessly, they stayed close to their fans, and they never gave up. They stayed in it, which is huge. I don't think they get enough credit for how much perseverance that they had with all the things that they had gone through and with their roots. Like, again, we've talked about this with other bands. Like, these were teenagers that were dealing with really deep pains and hurts and confusion. Like, we all had gone through a little bit of that. That's why we're here. That's why we were drawn to the scene in some form or fashion. It is hard to press through those things, to deal with your own mental health, to be able to grow, especially with fame and some success, and then have to keep chasing that success. Like, it is a huge deal to keep going and to keep persevering. And they did that. And the DIY work ethic was pure emo core, highlighted through this EP trilogy. This trilogy in Hurt in particularly came with one of my favorite songs. And actually it came up on a playlist. Again, I didn't necessarily follow all of these at the time. I kind of stuck to the old stuff and Silence in Black and White, the hits, I'm guilty for sure. But I was listening to like a curated playlist on Spotify, and this song came up and I thought it was a new song. And so I added it to like my go-to playlist. and just became obsessed with it. I was like, I love this song. I love the lyrics of it. I also just love the sound, kind of the way that the music flows. I thought it was new, but I learned by actually looking into it, like a smart person would do, that it came from the album Hurt in 2015. And the song is Common Crook. Got a thunderstorm inside my head. I got a million different reasons I should be dead. I put the pen to the paper, the pedal to the floor, fill up another cup, and I'm out the door. I've got the Arizona desert inside my chest. I've got a million different reasons there's nothing left. I open the dam and let the blood flood out, hoping like hell that I can end this now. All in all, we'll always fall, but at least we got these songs. Got 100 reasons I'm still depressed, an ocean of sorrows swimming through my head. The salt from my tears could fill the salted sea, but if they dried up, it'd be the end of me. All in all, we'll always fall, but at least we got these songs. Close the curtains, let's waste the day away. Forget about tomorrow for the love of yesterday. I miss you like a common crook. You stole my heart when no one looked. I need you right now. I'm having trouble letting go. The nights are long and the days are slow. I'm trying not to hate you, but I hope this hurts you twice as much as me. I'm having trouble letting go. The nights are long and the days are slow. I'm trying not to hate you, but I hope this hurts you twice as much as me. I hope this hurts you twice as much as me. Close the curtains, let's waste the day away. Forget about tomorrow for the love of yesterday. I miss you like a common crook. You stole my heart when no one looked. I need you right now. Close the curtains, let's waste the day away. Forget about tomorrow for the love of yesterday. I miss you like a common crook. You stole my heart when no one looked. I need you right now. We cannot talk about Hawthorne Heights, and I've already discussed it a little bit, without talking about the connection to the fans and how, again, deeply connected some of their songs are within this space. So if you've ever been to an emo night here in the US, or maybe even abroad, you know there will be a moment when Ohio is for Lovers hits, the whole crowd loses it. That's the staying power of Hawthorne Heights. They've become more than a band. They're a symbol of emo survival. At meet and greets, fans still share stories of how their songs help them through depression, breakups, and even suicide attempts. And JT is known for taking the time to speak to fans one-on-one, really leaning in to the stories that people share. And again, kind of carrying some of that weight and responsibility that comes with the space that they created so many years ago. They get a little bit of criticism for his like motivational speech that he often gives before Ohio is for Lovers. It does kind of feel, if you grow up in like the church, it kind of feels a little bit like one of those like concerts during like youth nights or something, where it's all about hope and like, you know, there is a lot of darkness around us. Don't give up. Your life is worth living. Like, you are loved, you are special. Like, he gives this speech, and, you know, people will criticize that. Okay, we've heard this a million times. And I will say, even at the Emo's Not Dead cruise, again, they played a few sets. This was always present. He pretty much gave the speech every single time, except for, I think, the songwriter round. But I think it is so important. And if you've had the privilege of hearing that speech 50 times, like, that's because you've had the privilege of hearing them and being in that space that many times. And not everyone gets that. Some people, it is their first moment in that space. And I think it's important that we all think back to those really hard moments where like song lyrics did seem to kind of pick us up and really feel like they rescue us because they put words to the things that we're feeling. And I know for myself, especially, I've gone through periods of my life where the emotions that I feel and the kind of pain that's present is so overwhelming that it's not like, oh, I'm consciously believing that this is going to take over my life or that I can't go on. Like, it's not like I'm making this conscious choice. But what I'm feeling in the moment, my brain can't even comprehend. I don't know how to communicate what I feel. I don't know how to ask for help. All I know is that what is happening is so overwhelming and I can't make sense of it because I'm trying to look for survival. Like, I'm trying to look for relief. Like, I want to, you know, get past it. I want to get through it. I don't necessarily know how to understand it. song lyrics provide space and they provide words for that. Whenever you are hurting in that way, they help you put words to what you feel so that you can express, even if you don't know what you're fully expressing yet. Right. And so a lot of people with this song in particular, like that was their story. And I do think while it does come across a little cheesy, because it does, especially, for those of us in our 30s who are, past that part of our lives and we have gotten to the point where we do know how to regulate emotions a little bit better. We do know how to process things a little bit better. We have to remember what it felt like when we couldn't. And there are so many people in these spaces that can't. And those little speeches that JT gives are so important. And he has a family. He seems the whole band seems so like their mental health seems really solid and strong, right? They have figured out how to process, maybe because they processed it through their lyrics growing up. Who knows? Maybe it's a Midwestern thing. I don't know. But it's really important. And whenever I was on the cruise, there was a girl there who was in her teens. Her name was Taylor, if anyone was there. And she was heavily inspired by the early 2000s kind of Hawthorne Heights style. She had the checkered shirt, just like JT still wears on stage. She had the bangs combed over, the black and white dyeing of her hair, the thick makeup. She wore the checkered belt with the low-rise jeans, the oversized t-shirt all layered up, like the jewelry, all the things. Like she was really into it. Her parents actually brought her on the cruise. They were still kind of coping with the fact that this is what she was really into, but they were being supportive of it. And he spent so much time with her. I think she covered one of their songs or did something in like a karaoke battle thing. And he was so incredibly like supportive of her and lifting her up. And I can only imagine that that was him providing what he felt maybe he needed younger, or just like really connected to the needs of the younger generation who connected to his music and his style and like the emo space as a whole. I don't know. I think it's really important. And I find a lot of joy in it, even if it is a little bit repetitive. Like you hear it, you hear it. We all just want to sing the lyrics, right? Like I get it. But there's also a lot of joy that comes from it because I know it can be so meaningful for so many people. So in 2002 and 2005, they were part of that Emos Not Dead cruise, which was a boat of heartbreak and eyeliner. It was iconic. They definitely deserve to be there. I don't think that they're going to be there in 2026. Maybe they'll just do every other year or so. But we got to experience that this year. They are known for, again, connecting during the cruise. I think that they led like a beer pong tournament. They were involved in the crowd. Again, they were very much heavily involved in interacting and always willing to take photos with the fans, like connected to the community, unlike a lot of people. In 2004, the band also performed at When We Were Young. JT actually brought out his daughter to sing Ohio is for Lovers with him, showcasing that emo will continue to live on. That's another kind of speech he gives, is it was never a phase. Like wear the Vans, like, wear the tight jeans, like express yourself. It's still going. And his daughter is a lot like that, which is really cool. And so it was really fun to have her involved kind of in that process with him. It felt really special. I didn't see that set. Again, I had seen them quite often and I had to pick and choose when we were young, but people who were there felt like it was pretty iconic. They have also continued to put out music. So in 2021, they released The Rain Just Follows Me, which is an album that proves they're still evolving. So we got songs like Constant Dread and Tired and Alone, which explore mental health, identity, and the disorienting feeling of aging in a world that's always moving faster. In interviews, JT has talked about being a dad, a touring musician, and a survivor of personal loss, all which seep into the band's newer lyrics. So their sound might be a bit more polished, but their heartbreak is still there, still present, still being processed through their lyrics. And then let's not forget, they helped pave the way for the emo revival. So bands like Movements, Trophy Eyes, and even newer screamo core artists all owe a debt to Hawthorne Heights and can lean on Hawthorne Heights' place, in the scene and what they helped kind of push with that third wave. So a little bit of fun facts or just kind of fun tidbits about Hawthorne Heights. JT Woodruff actually owns a coffee company called Greenhouse Coffee with his wife. which is interesting. They are very much, I feel like the band as a whole, but JT especially, very much entrepreneurial. And so that shows with the coffee love. JT did marry Niki, the Niki FM, the one. So when we look at the lyrics for Niki FM, let's go down now into the darkness of your thoughts. JT invites us into the emotional wreckage of a breakup, spiraling, mentally entering her internal world, his own headspace after loss and longing. Hurry up now, we're waiting for us to fall. It implies that the relationship was always teetering on the edge, like they both knew it would implode. And now he's sitting in the fallout. And then in the chorus, I'm outside of your window with my radio, the line that everyone screamed that shows. It's a direct reference to the 1989 film Say Anything, where John Cusack's character holds a boombox over his head outside the girl's window in a grand romantic gesture, except here it's a lot darker. So instead of being hopeful or having a sweet moment, it's emo desperation about clinging to a love that's already gone, to not being let in, but still here, stuck in the memory. You're the only station, you play the song I know. He's still tuned into her, obsessed, really. She's the only voice that matters, the only one that can emotionally reach him. And then getting into verse 2, I gave you everything, but I couldn't give enough. This is where JT's voice cracks with that classic emo combo of guilt and self loathing. He's blaming himself for the relationship's demise. So he gave it everything, but it wasn't enough. And if you weren't afraid of me, I tell you what I'm feeling now. This line is devastating. He knows he's crossed into the obsessive, possibly frightening territory, self aware enough to realize that the grief and intensity might have pushed her further away. And then to the bridge, I can't forget this. I won't forget this. I'm outside your window. This is where the love story becomes less about the connection and more about unresolved trauma. It's all about heartbreak. So while this song is kind of more heartbreak related, it was sort of based loosely without being completely based on Niki FM, but he married her. They're still married. They have a family together, and it's a really special thing in like one of the emo romance lores, I guess, of this third wave. The band has released several acoustic versions of their hits, stripping back the distortion to let the lyrics breathe. I really recommend you listen to those. Their songwriting session was one of my favorites just because it's just different to hear the songs in a different way, and to really just hear the lyrics for what they are. JT wrote the song Pens and Needles on a snowy, scary drive through the mountains during their van touring days in the middle of the night. He mentioned that it was like this windy road, and he woke up in the middle of the night and realized like they may not survive the night, and that it was absolutely terrifying, and wrote that song Pens and Needles based on that. He shared that during the songwriting session of the cruise. At one show in 2018, fans brought signs that read, Ohio is still for lovers, reminding the band how timeless that anthem is, which is really cool. The band also did a Is for Lovers tour through different cities over the last few years to create a space for newer bands and local communities to connect to the scene. They're all about connection. So not only lifting up the community, but also lifting up bands within the community, which was pretty cool. So I think that they did like a Tennessee is for lovers, a California is for lovers. I think they did Hawaii even. So different states and then cities within those states. And in true entrepreneurial fashion, the band has recently started their own screen printing shop in Ohio called Skeleton Club Printing, which kind of explains why they seem to have the best merch, because they do. Like even the shirt was on the cruise. They have some of the best merch, like tying together their old albums, like staying connected to the scene. They're highly creative and just fully in it, which I love to see. And I hope that they do well with their printing company. I think that they take on jobs from a lot of people, like smaller jobs, also with like bigger ones. So check it out if you need it. And then as we wrap up, what does Hawthorne Heights mean to the emo scene? They are proof that sadness can be a strength, that screaming can be healing, and that even in grief, there's a reason to keep going. That processing your emotions, screaming them at the top of your lungs, can lead to a groundedness and resilience in your life. From suburban bedrooms to world tours, they've helped thousands of us feel less alone, and for that, they'll always be emo royalty. So thanks for tuning in. If you liked this episode, please subscribe, review, whatever. Give it a little bit of love so that others in our little emo community can find it, or people who are just music lovers can find it and learn about some of these bands that they may not be as familiar with so that they can enjoy some of the things that we've always loved and enjoyed ourselves. If you have a story about Hawthorne Heights, you want to share a comment, please. I'd love to hear it. If you have a story about the emo scene, if you want to come on the podcast, you are always welcome. I invite you fully. I want this to be a space for you as well. You can look at the show notes. I've got my email address there. Please reach out so that we can get that scheduled and again, bring on some more faces here, not just my own. And then stay tuned for our next episode because we are going to dive into the women of emo. We've talked a lot about men in this space, and it's time that we talk about women and the female power of the emo world. So we're going to go deep into that. I cannot wait. There's a lot of good to talk about and a lot to celebrate there that we will continue to build off of as we move forward. So have an amazing wherever, whatever you are currently in, and I will see you in our next class.